Ahead of Vallow Daybell's sentencing in Arizona, I sat down with Brandon Boudreaux. He's the only survivor in all the deadly criminal cases from Arizona to Idaho, and he was key in helping investigators get convictions. Now, he's trying to move forward. Here's part of our conversation. You know, just a few weeks ago, maybe a month at this point, we were outside. Lori had just been convicted for conspiring to kill you. And you said, you know, I look forward to going into anonymity.
Yeah.
What has changed?
You know, I still don't really like the idea. I've never really liked the idea of being, I like just being a private person, you know, like I think most people probably don't realize it, but most of us probably, we appreciate our privacy. But yeah, I did an interview with Colby, and there's just a lot of really great people out there in the world who were really positive and watched it and shared really beautiful things. And as Colby and I talked after that, and we both talked about the passion that we have and with the idea of being able to maybe help other people out there who've gone through different traumas in their lives. I realized that there's a unique platform because people are interested in this that's available, and I realized that I could have a passion for working with him on that and hopefully helping other people share their stories and us sharing ours in a positive way that helps people. You know, if it's helpful, I think that's something I can be passionate about, like helping someone else.
And when you say Colby, you mean Colby Ryan, Lori Vallow's son.
Yeah, yes.
What is it like to work with him? What has your bond been like over the past, 6 years?
It's easy well, you know, over the last 6 years, you know, if people come, and we actually recorded a few things where people can come and learn a little bit about that, but like we weren't close during this time. It was tough. We were when he was younger, but man, when you go through really hard stuff like this, it's complicated. And so that first interview that I did with him is like the very first chance you have to see like us spending time together again. We didn't spend a lot of time together. We were both working through processing all the stuff that happened. The side effect of going through something so crazy and having so many people get hurt and killed and, you know, attempted murders is that like you don't know who you can trust. Even amongst the people who you think you should be able to trust, you just don't know. And so that, like, it was raw, vulnerable, and real when we sat down and met, because we had talked a little bit in the courtroom, but we hadn't really ever sat down and talked since before everything happened. So that was the first chance we had, and then afterwards we talked for a lot, and we've been talking a lot, and that's why we started doing things together because of it. You know, like we realized, hey, we have a strong connection. We both have a passion for it. We both went through something really hard, and we're both very passionate about giving back. And it's kind of, we're just lucky that we could actually do that in a way that it could actually maybe help us support our families.
Vallow Daybell will be sentenced Friday for conspiring to kill Brandon, a plot that involved Lori's brother shooting at Brandon back in October 2019. The bullet narrowly missed his head. Brandon was key in all of Lori's convictions, working with investigators for nearly 6 years on all the other murder cases. Vallow Daybell has already been sentenced to life in prison in Idaho for the murders of her children Tylee and JJ, and for her role in the death of Tammy Daybell, her current husband Chad Daybell's first wife. She was also convicted in Arizona for conspiring to kill her former husband Charles Vallow, who died in 2019. That sentencing will be Friday too. Trial to trial to trial. This has been such an arduous process and devastating process for, 6 years at this point. Did you ever think we'd be here? Kind of the tail end of all of this?
You know, it's kind of like, you know that everything has an end, you know, and I'm hopeful that I'm getting close to the end of all of the litigation and trials and court and all of that stuff. I'm really hopeful that that's where we're at, and I'm ready to not have that continually being a part of my life. But to answer your question, it's hard to get to that point where you feel really confident that, like, hey, we don't know how we're going to feel in those moments. We have imagined it, I'm sure, but like for me, I was so busy just trying to keep up with all of the things that were in my life that I didn't really spend a whole bunch of time imagining a time when that would finally occur. But I definitely can say that I do feel excited about the idea of not having that extra, there's a lot of emotion that comes from all of those things that you don't recognize, but it's a weight that exists. And so I look forward to not having that weight.
Brandon used to be married to Lori's niece, and they were going through a divorce at the time of the shooting. Vallow Daybell represented herself at trial and got to question Brandon on the stand.
How do you look back on what it was like to be in that courtroom, having to sit and be cross-examined by Lori?
Yeah, I mean, I think I said I've been asked that question before, something similar, and I would probably just say the same thing. Like, it's all the things you could imagine. It was uncomfortable. I didn't enjoy it. I wouldn't want to do it again. But it was the right thing to do in the time, and I would do it again every single time because it was what I should be doing, and I would never shirk that. But I did not enjoy that, and I do not wish that on anybody. It's not an enjoyable process.
And she's going to be sentenced on Friday. Do you think this is actually the end?
I have no idea. I try to let life happen as it happens, and then kind of trust the Lord in the process to help me know what the right things are to do when things come up. Hard to be surprised at this point in my life with all of the crazy stuff that's happened. So I try to stay as even keel as I can, not let anything push me too high or too low.
At the core of the crimes, extreme doomsday religious beliefs, including Chad and Lori rating people light or dark and calling victims zombies before they died.
There's these dark religious beliefs that are at the core of the cases. What was it like for you to uncover or learn about some of those beliefs?
Probably just like it is for everybody else. Shocking, weird, bizarre. Doesn't really connect. Doesn't make sense to me personally. It's not something I would believe.
You've stated you're a guy of faith.
Yeah.
How did you balance that, this justification?
Yeah.
That, that's been the phrase come up, justified, the crime's justified by these religious beliefs. How do you balance that as someone who has faith?
Yeah, I think being a temperate person, being moderate in all things is important, right? Like, if you find yourself inside of a faith where you feel like you're really pushing yourself to some extreme, I think that's something you should really look at and look internally and say, is this making me better? Is this making the world better? Or is it making it worse? Christ in the Bible teaches, by their fruits ye shall know them, right? And I think that's something we all have to examine in our lives, and we should, I think it's healthy to do an inventory on a regular basis, weekly, monthly, however you find it best for you. But I think that's something that you really should do if you want to be a person that doesn't end up in a space that's unhealthy, right?
And in this case, we saw red flags. Charles had given red flags. He was talking with family members. He was talking with the police. What would you say to someone who maybe says, one of my loved ones is maybe sharing some things that feel extreme? Would you have any advice for other people who maybe see their loved ones going down a path that they are concerned about?
Yeah, I think we can't control other people's choices, right? At the end of the day, like, you have to be accepting that you can only control what you can control. But the best advice I think I could give someone is do your best to love them, but be very careful to protect the people who need the protecting the most, right? Like, depending on who that is and what the situation is, society has a lot of pieces out there that can help us, when we're not sure. Like, if you're looking at a spouse that's having a lot of issues and you have kids together, then lean on experts that can tell you when, because you're going to be too close to a situation, you might not always know the right answer. So try to lean on some experts and find some people you can trust who can tell you when you're in the right and when you're in the wrong, and what things you should and shouldn't do, and who you should focus on protecting. Because sometimes that's a hard choice when you have a lot of people you care about and you don't know which ones to trust and who to protect.
Was your faith ever shaken by all that's happened?
I mean, I don't know if shaken's the right word. Like, was it tested? Probably a lot, a lot of times you're weighing and trying to decide what you believe, but I think sometimes just in your soul, you know, if you believe or if you don't believe, right? And I don't judge anyone if they don't believe. I understand that we all have different life experiences. And then I hope that they can not judge me if I do believe, you know, and for me, my belief has never faltered. I believe in Jesus Christ. I believe that God loves me and that He'll guide me. And although at times it was hard to find the direction or hard to go through something that wasn't the way I thought it should be, I've never doubted that He was there and that He led me. And so far, although it hasn't been the way I wanted, I still have found a lot of joy, long-lasting joy, even amongst all of the pain.
I think some people might be surprised to hear that.
Life's not linear, right? Like, there's times where life is linear, and I think most of us try to think of it that way, but you could be in the middle of some really painful stuff in certain parts of your life and some really great joy in other parts, you know, or just happiness too, and there's, I think, a difference between joy and happiness. Some days you wake up, you feel really sad, you know, like I think we're all human, and like some days you do wake up that way and you feel that way, and sometimes I try to weigh out and decide if this is a space where I should focus on the emotion, or should I let it be present for a little bit and like not push it away and make it worse later, but like, you know, really let it process for a little bit, or is this the wrong time to be focused on that and maybe I need to give myself some time later to process it, or is this something I'm dwelling in and it's unhealthy, right? Like, so I think you have that, and then I also think if you give too much time to that, you're going to miss out on some wonderful opportunities. I have beautiful children that are growing up, and they live beautiful lives, and you don't get a do-over. You don't get to go back and see your kid's first day of school, or your kid's, you know, first time riding a bike, or any of the other firsts that are amazing when you're a parent. And so you have choices. You have to choose which. Am I going to dwell on this and miss out on some of those things? Am I going to dwell on anger or frustration, or am I going to choose to find the best piece that I can and then go focus the time that I do have to do something that's better?
After the verdict in your case, you mentioned that forgiveness is part of your process moving forward. Where are you at in that process now?
It's a work in progress always, right? Like, I think forgiveness is something that is super healthy. I believe if the more you forgive other people for their faults, the more you can forgive yourself for your faults, the more that room there is to love other people and to find other things that you can spend that emotional energy on, right? Because we all have so much to give. And so my answer is, you know, it's some days I'm doing great and other days I'm not. And I think it's okay to not be okay, and it's okay to be doing well, you know? Like, just kind of let myself find where I'm at, and then hopefully over time you're constantly improving a little bit, you know, getting better, doing better.
Is there a day in the future where you see yourself forgiving Lori or any of the co-conspirators?
Because it's a process, like I think I've probably forgiven her for some of it. You know, I've tried to get outside of myself and think about some of that stuff, but and I've probably forgiven some of them, but because it's also a process, I'm sure there's stuff that there's still times where you realize you still have some anger, you know, or some frustration, or something comes up because of it that makes you feel angry. Like, something happens with my kids and I realize that there's something going on there, and it makes me angry that they even have to deal with this because of it. Like, so if you're really being authentic, like, of course, like, it's a process. Like, it's hard to just say, yeah, a blanket, like I said, it's not linear, right? So it's easy to give a blanket statement like, yeah, I forgive, but if we're really being authentic with ourselves, I think it's a little more complicated than that. Like, the desire of my heart is not to carry all of that with me the rest of my life. I don't think that's healthy. I don't think that would I don't think that would be the best version of myself that my kids or my wife deserve. You know, if I'm busy carrying that instead, that bitterness, and that, because that's what, when people do the things that happened here with murder and attempted murder and theft and all these things, like, it hurts. It's painful, and it creates a lot of bad feelings, and so you have to let go of those feelings to go have the other feelings that you want to have in your life.
And, you know, you said maybe at this point you've forgiven Lori for certain parts of things. You've had to step outside yourself to kind of look at that. What are you thinking? What are you looking at? Are you trying to kind of get into her mind?
Yeah, I try not to spend too much time thinking about her at all.
Chad Daybell was sentenced to death in Idaho, but not charged in Arizona. And Lori's brother, Alex Cox, died before charges were filed. Brandon's ex-wife, Melanie Pulowski, is also listed as a co-conspirator in the attempt to murder him, but she's never been charged.
Do you want to see the judicial process carry this out any further?
I don't want to talk about individual people in that process. I think that's not my job. My hope is that anyone who commits a crime, that we can use the judicial system we have to hold them accountable for their own good too. Like, you can't really grow and become better if you're busy continuing to do terrible things.
And I know you've talked before about, your focus being a good dad, being a good husband. What was it like to navigate this with your children?
The way we navigated it was I tried to minimize it ever being something that we talked about, to be honest. Like, I just focused on their kids. They don't need to know about it. It's not something that's important. And the less that it was in the news or a part of that, the less chance there's ever anything that might get to them. And so I just raised them to have normal lives, and we didn't focus on it at all.
Did they ever ask any questions?
Sure, yeah. There's some questions you talk about with them, but that's stuff that I would probably keep between me and my kids.
Is there a point where you think you'll ever kind of sit them down and say, hey, here's what happened? From what I've learned, I'm not an expert, but our brains develop all the way to our early 20s, and so emotionally, to handle the level of things that I imagine it's going to be like for each of us to handle as you go through this, I want them to be as prepared as possible for that. So if they feel the need to talk about it before, and I feel like it's something that I need to do, then I might do it before. And otherwise, I would probably and have encouraged them to wait. If they want to know a lot of details, I give them the truth and some basic details. But I think the best strategy is to wait. And one of the reasons I'm personally writing a book about all of it in detail is so that when the time's right, they can get it from there and then come talk to me about it afterwards. Because that's the best way, in my opinion, is to really be thorough and try to document it all in a way that they can have, that I know is as correct as can be possibly put together. So that's I guess my answer to that. And I don't want to harp too much on it, but is there, did you have to explain loss to them? There were people that maybe they wouldn't be seeing anymore. Yeah,
you go through a lot of that stuff. You go through a lot of those things that you wouldn't have thought you'd be going through when you face challenges you weren't expecting, like this, like losing a bunch of people who were basically our family for a lot of years.
I want to definitely talk about Tylee, JJ, Charles, Tammy. How do you want them to be remembered?
Hopefully people love them. Unfortunately, they all are the biggest losers in all of this. Like, they don't get a say. And so for me, I don't dare speak about Tammy because I didn't know her. And I don't think that that's appropriate for me to do, other than to say that from what I've seen, she was a beautiful woman who obviously left a bunch of people with love in their lives. So she must have been good at choosing good, right? I knew Tylee, I knew JJ, and I knew Charles, and for me, those are kind of personal things that maybe one day I'll be ready to talk about them, but I'm not. That's not something I probably want to just share with everyone. Mostly because they're things that are treasured for me.
No, and that's totally fine. We aren't trying to pry. We just want to know. Obviously, we, need to talk about them as well, just as much as everyone who's been convicted in these cases. I think that's super important.
He's also working with Lori's only living child, her son, Colby Ryan, on a podcast project and media company, Timber and Wings.
But tonight, I think that we're going to dive into something that's a little bit close to the heart.
And, in the vein of deciding what you want to talk about, what you don't want to talk about, as you move forward and, into this media space, how do you make those decisions about what to share?
It's a work in progress, right? So sometimes you've asked great questions throughout this interview, but I think, when Colby and I sat down, that was one of the things we talked about, is how can we be vulnerable so that we can share things that help other people, and then how can we think through what other people might be looking for in that vulnerability, and then how can we go find other people whose stories will help people when we bring them in and share their vulnerability, and bring them in and make them feel comfortable so they can do that. So I think in that process, those are the questions that we're asking. Is we want to have a space, and we want to create a space for people where they can create growth for themselves, and maybe people who are struggling to create that growth have somewhere to come and be uplifted and see that, hey, I can do this too. Other people have felt like I feel I'm not alone, because a lot of times in that space you feel alone, or those are the feelings that kind of sneak in, is feeling alone or feeling like you're not good enough, or any of that kind of stuff. I think our goal is to create content to help people realize that they are, and that they're not, that they are good enough, and that they're not alone.
And we are actually sitting in what is your podcast studio now.
Yeah.
Is it weird to have a podcast studio?
Not something ever on my to-do list, but sometimes that's how life goes, right? Like if you are open to it, possibilities might come up that you weren't expecting. And that's what I'd say this is.
I was able to, at least listen to some of what you guys have talked about. And there was this conversation between, I guess, the distinction between victim and survivor.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering how that sits with you and why you think that distinction is important.
That's a great question. I don't ever want to shame somebody who's been a victim of something, because it's okay to not be okay and just to be stuck in this space where like somebody did something to you and you had no say in it. And I'd never want anyone to feel like that's not okay. Like that's super okay. Just for myself, being someone who likes to try to control what I can control, I love the distinction that I make when I call myself a survivor, because then it empowers me to focus on not just being the victim, but how am I empowering myself to move forward? How am I going out and starting to accomplish life again and grow and be better? And to me, that's what the survivor word means. Like you survived, you started to improve again on your life and go out, and you didn't let the stimulus or the thing that happened become you. Right? You were willing to fight through the thing that happened, and it happened, and you acknowledged it, and then you chose outside of you acted with independent choice to be who you wanted to be. And to me, that's a beautiful thing, and that's something we really want to talk with people about when we're talking about heroes and people that have accomplished great things. We want to talk with people who are survivors, who have been able to get past not just being that victim, but been able to start becoming a survivor and doing something about it, and moving into life and doing things that all of us would view and say, that's amazing. So cool that you did.